The older I get, the quieter I've become. Not because I have nothing to say, but because I've learned that not everyone deserves to hear your truth. Especially when your own children start treating you like a guest in the very house you built brick by brick. My name is Linda. I'm 68 years old, a retired schoolteacher, and a widow for nearly 10 years. My husband, Robert, and I spent most of our lives saving to build our dream home. A small but elegant 2-story house near the lake. Every corner of that house held our story. The scratch on the kitchen counter from when he tried to fix the blender, the faded paint on the porch where we used to drink tea every morning, and the rose garden he planted for me every spring. It was our sanctuary. After Robert passed away, the house felt too big, too quiet. My son, Daniel, insisted I move in with him and his wife, Claire. But I refused. I wasn't ready to leave the memories behind. Instead, I let Daniel and Claire move in with me for a while to help me around the house, as he said. I agreed, thinking it would be nice to have family close again. For the first few months, it was wonderful. The house came alive with laughter, the smell of Claire's cooking, and the soft sound of my grandson, Oliver, running through the halls. I loved them dearly, and I wanted nothing more than to see my son happy. But slowly, things started to change. It began with small things. Claire would rearrange my kitchen without asking. She'd throw out the curtains Robert and I had picked, saying they were outdated. Then, she began inviting her friends over for dinner parties, using my best china without so much as a thank you. One evening, I walked into the living room to find her sitting on my husband's favorite recliner with her feet up on the coffee table. I gently said, "Sweetheart, could you not put your feet there? That was your father-in-law's favorite spot." She didn't even look at me. "Linda, you really should relax about these old things. It's just furniture." Her tone was dismissive, cold even. I tried to brush it off. She was young, I told myself. Maybe she just didn't understand sentiment. But soon, the line between hospitality and disrespect blurred completely. Claire started acting like the house was hers. She redecorated the living room, replaced my photos with hers, and even told guests that they'd just finished renovating their place. I laughed it off at first, but deep down I felt a sting of betrayal. Then one day, I overheard a conversation that changed everything. I was in the hallway, folding laundry, when I heard Claire talking to her mother on the phone. "Honestly, Mom, I can't wait until the house is officially ours. Once we convince Daniel's mom to move into assisted living, we'll finally have some space to ourselves. I already have plans for the garden." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. She wanted to push me out of my own home. That night, I confronted Daniel about it. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, my hands trembling slightly as I spoke. "Daniel, I heard Claire talking to her mother. She said she wants me to move out. Is that true?" He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Mom, please don't start. Claire didn't mean it that way. She just thinks it would be safer for you to live somewhere with support. You know? A place for seniors." "Safer?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "I've lived here for 30 years, Daniel. Your father and I built this home. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself." He looked away, avoiding my eyes. "We just think it's time for a change." That night, I barely slept. I sat in Robert's old chair, staring at the fireplace, wondering where I went wrong. I had raised Daniel to be kind, respectful, to never forget where he came from. But somewhere along the way, I had lost him to ambition and convenience. The next few weeks were tense. Claire started making snide remarks, subtle digs that only I seemed to notice. "It must be hard keeping up with the bills at your age," she'd say, pretending to be concerned. Or, "We really need to modernize the place. Old houses like this need younger energy." Each word chipped away at me, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to cause a scene. I told myself that love meant patience, that Daniel would eventually realize what was happening. Then came the breaking point. One Sunday afternoon, I walked into the kitchen to find Claire shouting at Oliver, my grandson. He had spilled a bit of juice on the floor, and she was furious. "You're just like your grandmother, always making a mess," she snapped. "Claire," I said calmly, "he's just a child. There's no need to yell." She turned to me sharply. "Linda, this is my house now. I'll discipline my son however I see fit." "My house," I repeated softly, staring at her. "Yes," she said boldly. "Daniel and I live here. We handle everything. You should be grateful we're letting you stay." Something inside me broke. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from pure disbelief. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Daniel walked in. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Claire crossed her arms. "Your mother's overstepping again." I looked at him, tears in my eyes. "Daniel, she just said this is her house." Daniel sighed heavily. "Mom, please don't start another argument. Don't argue with my wife in her house." His words hit me like a slap. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room blurred as the sound of my own heartbeat filled my ears. He didn't just defend her. He erased me from my own home. Without a word, I turned and walked out the door. I needed air. I needed space to think. I spent that night at a small motel near the lake, the same lake Robert and I used to visit when life felt too heavy. As I sat there, staring at the rippling water, I made a decision. If they wanted the house so badly, they could have it, but not in the way they imagined. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Mr. Harris, who had handled our property documents for decades. I told him everything. He nodded slowly, understanding my pain but also admiring my resolve. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "since the property was bought under your name and your husband's, and since his will left his share entirely to you, the house is solely yours. You can do whatever you wish." That afternoon, I signed the papers. A week later, a for sale sign went up in front of the house. When Daniel saw it, he stormed into my motel room, furious. "Mom, what the hell is this? You can't just sell the house." I looked at him calmly. "I can." And I did. His face turned red. "You're being ridiculous. Where are we supposed to go?" "Your wife said it was her house," I replied softly. "Now she can find a new one." He was silent. Claire stood behind him, pale and speechless. For once, she had nothing to say. I stood up, looked at both of them, and said, "I loved you both enough to let you in my home. But love doesn't mean letting people step on you. You forgot whose name was on those papers, Daniel. You forgot who built that home. So now, it's time for me to start fresh." A few weeks later, I moved into a small cottage by the lake. It wasn't as big or as fancy, but it was peaceful. I planted roses in the garden, just like Robert used to, and every morning I'd sip my tea on the porch, watching the sunrise reflect off the water. Daniel visited once, months later. He looked older, tired, maybe even regretful. He said quietly, "Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I let Claire control too much." I smiled faintly. "It's all right, Daniel. Some lessons take time. I hope you both find your way." When he left, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sometimes love means walking away, even from the people you gave everything to. Now, when I look out at the lake, I think of Robert and how proud he'd be that I finally stood up for myself. I learned that silence has power, but so does knowing when to speak. And if you're listening to this story, remember, never let anyone make you feel small in a place you built with love. Thank you for joining me today. If my story touched your heart, please like the video, subscribe to Aunt's Story, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Sparkling Heart. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never forget who you are. Sparkles.